of Asia. And I think one, this title escapes me at the moment, that specifically talks about pandemics and the like as instruments of Chinese communist warfare. We've asked him for his participation in this program. He was unable to do it in person, but we have, I'm very pleased to say, a video from Steven Mosher, the topic of which I think is the Chinese Communist Party's historic contempt for human lives, those of their own people, as well as, if you can imagine, even less regard for ours. And the CCP's relentless pursuit of novel ways to destroy such people. Let's go to the videotape now.
Well, I'm happy to join you today, Frank, and to talk about the fact that China is continuing its bioweapons research into dangerous pathogens that can kill Americans and, of course, kill off other things like America's food supply. And in this context, I recall 2 years ago when we discovered a secret Chinese bioweapons laboratory just a few miles north of where I grew up, near Fresno, California. And the Biden administration did everything possible to try and cover up the fact that the Chinese Communist Party was running a secret bioweapons laboratory right under our noses in California. The FBI refused to investigate. The CDC came in, and instead of investigating the pathogens and finding out exactly what their genome looked like, whether or not they had been engineered, how deadly, how transmissible they were, they simply destroyed all the samples. So this was a classic cover-up on the part of the Biden administration, which covered up a very important fact that we all know from the COVID debacle, that bioweapons are at least as dangerous as chemical weapons, or at least as dangerous as nuclear weapons in terms of the number of human beings that they could potentially kill. And I believe that after we discovered that secret bioweapons laboratory in the United States, and who knows, there may be others, the Chinese government decided to operate in a slightly different way. Why go to the trouble of setting up a secret bioweapons laboratory in the United States if you can simply implant bioweapons researchers from China in American labs that are already set up, that are already funded, already doing dangerous gain-of-function research? And you can simply bring in secretly, as these Chinese scientists have been credibly accused of doing now on 3 occasions, bring in credibly these dangerous pathogens and work on them under our very noses in the laboratories that we ourselves are paying for in our major research universities. And how easy it would be, after bringing in these dangerous pathogens, for one to leak out of the laboratory. And I say leak in quotes, because it might be a deliberate act. In fact, I suspect that the release of the COVID virus was quite deliberate from the Wuhan laboratory. As you know, Frank, I wrote a book about that debacle. Certainly the spread of the virus around the world was quite deliberate on the part of the Chinese Communist Party. But how much more deadly and infectious would a pathogen be if it were released not in China and then spread slowly around the world and here, but released in the heartland of the United States itself, or released upon our crops, as one recent pathogen that was brought in would have devastated our crops. So these are the concerns that I have. And the only solution to this problem, as far as I can see, is to shut out Chinese researchers, China researchers, regardless of what their claimed background is, because their background may be fabricated, from our laboratories altogether. If we want to let Chinese students come here at all, and I quite frankly don't, but apparently we are under the new trade agreement with the Chinese Communist Party, that is have been negotiated and may be approved by Xi Jinping, China's dictator, and President Donald Trump. Under this new agreement, presumably, we will allow Chinese students to continue to study at our universities. But let's let them study political science or philosophy or theology or sociology. Let's keep them out of the engineering departments. Let's keep them out of the science departments, the genomics departments, the biology departments, because we now have a history, a pattern of Chinese scientists, starting way back several years ago with the head of the Wuhan laboratory, the infamous Dr. Shizhang Li, who studied at the University of North Carolina under Ralph Baric in his lab there, funded by Dr. Anthony Fauci. And that's where Dr. Shizhang Li learned her gain-of-function research that enabled her to go back to China, to her Wuhan lab, working with the China's bioweapons program and develop COVID-19. So let's keep China's scientists out of our laboratories, out of our research departments, keep them in the humanities, keep them studying history, but don't let them steal our intellectual property. And above all, don't let them in our own labs create dangerous pathogens that might one day be used to kill millions of Americans.
Thank you for such an incredibly concise and impactful intervention. I just want to say we will, I'm sure, be talking a bit more about this bio lab discovered in Reedley, California, and the efforts the Biden administration indeed did go to try to cover it up. I would mention just in passing that the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party of the House of Representatives has concluded that there are almost certainly more such labs inside our country. But to Steve's point, they are certainly, prospectively at least, being augmented by our own research labs in the hands of Chinese nationals sent here for the purposes of waging biological warfare against us, quite possibly. I also wanted to just mention that Shizhang Li, the researcher from China that Steve mentioned, is better known as the Bat Lady for the work that she has done in using bats to advance the biological warfare program of the Chinese Communist Party. Our friend Sean Lin may have more to say on that in a moment. But before we get to him, we're going to have another of our faithful contributors to the